Hello, you're listening to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club, and you're most welcome.
Well, it's Friday, it's 5 to 5, and that means the doors to... Oh, that's the door. Do you want to get that?
Yeah. Don't fill me a deck chair just yet. I haven't decided whether to weigh anchor in this particular provincial port or unfurl my mainsail and set course for La Rochelle, because you positioned this edifice in your online virtual mission statement briefing as a shed, which imagined a particularly unappetizing prospect of some old man surrounded by tomato plants and back issues of Playboy, desperately trying to tune his transistor into test match special. So look, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to provide me with a chamomile tea and a dark chocolate rice cake, or I'm making like Scooby-Doo and I'm skedaddling.
Can I ask one question at this point?
Look, no, we're going to take questions later. If you're going to ask questions at any point, I'm not going to get into a full flow. I'm just going to be rambling on here like I'm on Classic FM.
Well, that's rather handy for myself and Alan, because we were just sat here thinking what we normally do at this point on a Friday is we go for a bit of a ramble, don't we? And, Alan, do you think you recognise who this gentleman is who's barged into the shed?
It's not a shed. It's more like a kind of shepherd's hut, which frankly needs moving to the edge of the field and burning. Look, write the memoirs in your own time, but I'm not on mine, okay?
Absolutely. Alan, any thoughts here?
I'm still trying to clamber out from the bottom of this deep well of buzzwords I've been buried under.
Yeah, well, stand on them and climb up, yeah? You'll find they're firmer than you think, unlike other parts of your anatomy.
Is this Vincent Franklin we're actually talking to?
Yeah, it is. It is, but I just love being that man, and I've not done him for a long time, so it was quite nice to get into that. I can say anything, and people have to do as I say, no matter how wanky I am. So I was enjoying that for a while.
Oh, that was fantastic, pure Stewart.
He was good, wasn't he?
To play.
It was great to play. It is, because usually in life, if you say terrible things to people, you then have to, you try not to, unless you're a complete dick. And secondly, if you do it, you then kind of go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean it like that. Whereas it's really nice playing somebody who just sort of says, somebody says, look, you can't do that, it's not fair. Yeah, I think you find I can. I'm moving on without ever having to apologize for it and just plow on. It's great.
Must be incredibly freeing to do.
Yeah, to have no sort of consequences, if you know what I mean. In that he was, what I loved about him was, I mean, he came from that other world. I mean, he dropped into from the kind of the Google sphere into Westminster. He wasn't based on anybody, despite what the Daily Mail may tell you. That's why I always say in interviews and to my lawyer. But he didn't sort of belong. So they couldn't quite get hold of him, because all the things that would usually affect a politician, he just wasn't influenced by, and he had this kind of shirt out, you never rarely saw it, but I never wore shoes. He never wore shoes because it's like, what is it, the 80s? He was great. I liked him. And it was into the last series, I was doing it at the same time. In fact, like sometimes on the same day, I would leave Amando and the team at one place and then go to where we were doing 2012, which was the comedy about the setting up of the Olympics, John Morton's thing, where I played the opposite of that, of a bloke from Yorkshire who said, I don't kill you, that's stupid, what you thinking? And it was like the opposite of playing Stewart Pearson. It was a man who looked at people like Stewart Pearson just like, you utter dick. And it was nice to play both of them.
Yeah. Stewart's final resignation when he walked out. That is, it's one of my son's favourite moments of television. He loves the thick of it, but he adores that. It's fantastic.
It's a lovely moment, and it's a really brilliant example of how amazing those writers were. Because when I got the first scripts, when I started on the Christmas specials, and Stewart swore a bit, and I said to them, it'd be really nice, because I'm sort of the Tory party version of the old, of Malcolm, in a way, in that I'm the kind of Deus Machina, I'm the kind of highest ranking person, as it were, you're going to meet, sort of thing. It'd be nice if I didn't swear, wouldn't it? And they so ran with it that I even called somebody, whoever else called the fucker, I called him the F-worderer. But then at the end, they gave me the strongest swear word you can ever say on British television as the last word I say in the last speech I ever say on the last, it was beautifully, they were just amazing writers.
Yeah. Oh, it was a fantastic series. But, well, listen, what we should do is we should give this bingo machine a bit of a spin and see where we
Go
end
for it.
up and see what it wants us to talk about. But I can guarantee you I will try and bring it back round to the thick of it at some point. But if you're up for a bit of a ramble, should we give her a whirl and see where we end up?
Let's ramble away.
Okay, off we go.
Tony's enchanted bingo machine. A curious contraption of cogs, levers, and glowing buttons that hums with ominous energy. This machine generates 3 completely random numbers. These numbers are fed directly into the Dewey Decimal System, the arcane reference system by which books and their contents are categorized. In this way, the bingo machine conjures from thin air a topic of conversation so enthralling, so wildly unexpected, that it leaves the members of the Rambling Club both bewildered and vaguely excited. Thus, another evening is saved from the brink of boredom, thanks to Tony's marvellous, possibly haunted and entirely inexplicable bingo machine.
Well, here we are in the great outdoors with our guest president, Vincent Franklin, with our first set of numbers, and those numbers are
4, 2, 4.
424, 424. That's not assigned or no longer used. So instead, we go to 420, and we've got English and Old English. English and Old English. Okay. Well, you've already pointed out something, Vincent, here, which is this thing of accents, your ability to play across accents. Do you have your own accent? What would you say it is?
Yeah, I'm from Bradford. Well, I was born in Keighley, but brought up in Bradford. My dad had a market store, so if I was working on my dad's market stores, I'd be from Bradford, and that's how But then I went to the grammar school where everyone talked a bit posher, so I did that slightly northern but not specific. And then I went to drama school where I learned received pronunciation. But then I realised that in voiceovers, what they really want from me is things like, if you've been saving in a pension for a while, maybe with your employer chipping in. And at the moment, I'm just rehearsing Christmas Carol where I play 30 people, everything from old Joe right through, all of them. So because I was the ugliest, baldest man at drama school, so you got to play all of those weird characters. You had to be able to do Welsh, and you had to be able to, because you were never going to play the man who goes, look here, I've come for the girl, and I'll fight you if you take her. So I did lots and lots of voices, and like to do that. I like being other people. It's the point. That's the whole fun of this, isn't it? Of this game, is pretending to be other people. I'll stick on a funny nose and a wig and a, whatever. Yeah.
It's what Dickens himself did, isn't it? Because he made a fortune from speaking tours, reading from his books.
Yeah.
And he was apparently a really good character actor.
Yeah, all right.
Physicality would Jones.
No, he was. No, you're right. But his lasted a long time. I did this adaptation. I did it last year. I'm doing it again this year. I started with an adaptation that was one of his scripts. But he took massive liberties with his book. He kind of paraphrases things in a way that's quite shocking. And he misses bits that you think you wouldn't dream of missing. Like he doesn't do, in his version, he doesn't do this boy is ignorance, this girl is one, beware them both. But which seems to me the sort of centre of the book, really.
Yeah.
But his would last 3 odd hours, and he only read it. He didn't learn it. So whereas I've learned it, because it seems not fair to be looking at a book when people have paid for you to look at them, but he toured America and all over with it. But because he was sort of an actor, really, wasn't he? And everything he writes is very theatrical. He creates complete, he has brilliant scenes that you could absolutely stage. It's not accidental that they're turned into films and TV shows and whatever, because he writes scenes after scenes in which characters come together and conflict happens within scenes. It's not in people's heads. They meet each other and argue and fight and disagree but amongst that, all that brilliant language. I mean, I'm going to bore you now, but you can cut it out. He sometimes refers to it as a ghost, a spectre, an apparition, a shade, all of these different words within the same sentence, different words for ghosts. And if you ever get it wrong, even though it makes complete sense for an audience, all the rhythm goes. He absolutely wrote to be spoken because like Shakespeare, whatever, that it has a fantastic readable quality. And you just need to have said apparition when you should have said spectre, and you just kind of stumble like you've just clipped the hurdle, and you'll get to the end, but you won't be right. No, he really understood language to be spoken. And I think, because your subject was old and new, language. And it seems to me that is that you should always write or try to write like you speak. Because as soon as people try and write like it's writing, they just become pretentious and they use words that they don't. You really, ideally, to communicate, you want to be in a room with somebody, don't you? When we started writing letters, because our villages got too big for us to all get in a room and just say, oh, John, I need to tell you, and we wanted to pass things on to people further away on other generations. It's always a piss poor alternative to actually being with someone and talking to them. Yeah. So the idea that you'd then write in a way that didn't in some way reflect who you are and what you care about, and words that are spontaneous for you and resonate with you, seems to me bonkers. So I like writing where, as Churchill said, old words and short ones. Yeah.
No, it's Harrison Ford on Star Wars, isn't it? When he gave Lucas his script back and he said, "You can type this shit, George, but you can't say it."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. As a character actor then, Vincent, I mean, how do you actually train to become a character actor? Because obviously, looking at your IMDb, it's just this colossal amount of work. So that ability to completely transform yourself, is that something that you can learn? Or do you think that that's a natural skill? I mean, as a kid, were you able to play different roles for fun and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think you can get better at it. I think if you watch really good people and you nick stuff and you think, oh, that's clever, and you listen, I like sitting with a crossword in a pub and listening to people chatter and hearing the language they use and the way they say things and the voices and accents and all of that. And you can certainly get better at it and practice it. But I think you kind of got to want to play. I think acting is a bit like football. You can train at football and get better at it, but I'm never going to play for Bradford City, no matter how hard I train. And I suspect there are people who, no matter how long they spend at drama school, would never feel that joy of actually becoming someone else and being able to present that in a way that convinced others and bounced off other people and all of that. But I think you do have to work at it. And when I used to, I do a lot of stuff. Everything's coming back to Christmas Carol. Well, we'll move on, I promise you. But one of the things I was really keen on was that everything I do comes from the script. The worst thing you could do is just go, I've got 30 characters to play, so I'll have a Welsh one, and I'll have a one from North, and you just plonk these things on. So I've tried, I think really you need to look for the clues in who people are, where they're from, and what they say and do. So for me, for instance, the ghost of Marley, there's a brilliant bit, where he takes off the bandage and his lower jaw drops down on his chin. And I really like that. I thought, God, I remember as a kid reading that and it being quite scary, the idea of your lower jaw. And you go, okay, so I'm going to play with a Marley that has no control of his lower jaw. And before you know it, you're Edward Fox. And it's quite a useful way of becoming Marley. And it keeps him real, and yet you can lose. So do you mean rather than just going, oh, I'll do voice number A, please, like you're keeping up at the post office? So it's finding those clues, and there's lots of it in Dickens. So I think that's what character acting is. It is building a character around real things, and also making sure they still really want things and need things and love people and hate stuff. Do you know what I mean? Not just going, oh, well, I'll give them a limp and a parrot and an eye patch, and although. I do like all of those gimmicks.
But it's like the David Mamet thing, isn't it? Where it's his memo to the BBC, wasn't it? In which he supposedly said, drama is three things. It's who's this person, what do they want, and why can't they get it?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that is kind of it, isn't it? If there's no obstacles, there is no drama. Do you know what I mean? There's, and everybody, and it might be a little thing, like, what you might want is to get Scrooge to give some money to charity. So you've come in with your little book and said, I'd like some money for charity. Or it might be that you love this woman, or it might be that you want to take over the world. But there'll always be somebody. Scrooge won't give you money. She doesn't fancy you, and the rest of the world thinks you'd be a shit president. So that's because if they thought you'd be great at it, there's no drama. It's just a coronation.
What about when you were growing up? I mean, I presume you were surrounded where you were growing up by lots of different character voices. Were they things that influenced you at all?
God, I want to. I'm terrible thing of being. I like to agree. I like to go. Yes, they were. Yes, that's right, Paul. There was. My dad had the Bronte Cafe restaurant in Haworth, and so we had lots of visitors because Haworth has people passing through. And next door to me, there's my auntie Joanna, who isn't an auntie, but if you come from the north, older ladies and friend of the family are all aunties. Auntie Joanna, whose father was Arthur Brough, who was the old man in upstairs in Are You Being Served with the tape measure around his neck, that was behind any gentleman's yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
So she had trained and she was an actress, or had been, and now she ran the Bronte Museum bookshop. So I was very aware that in her house it was a bit magic. There was a sort of, and in her cellar she had loads, because he'd run Folkestone Rep, and there was loads of things like, those opera hats, those top hats that you can open up that stuck flat. She had shelves with teak on. And weird clothes, and I always thought that was a bit and I went, when I was doing fancy dress and stuff, I would borrow top hats to be one of the Diddy men or whatever, and I always thought that was a bit sort of magical. Just that she had a theatricality about, and her house was full of sort of books and roast lamb. I know it sounds, but she was always roasting lamb, and so there was that. But my family's not theatrical. My dad, like I say, was an airframe mechanic in the RAF. Then he ran restaurants, and then he was a market trader. And my mum was a nurse, and then she taught nursery nursing. It wasn't, no, we're not a theatrical family. Although my grandfather was a Methodist minister, so I suppose that's about as theatrical as you get, isn't it?
Yeah. So what was the response to you suddenly going off to study? Because it was Bristol Old Vic, wasn't it? So
yeah, I went to university first. That was a sort of deal. My family were really brilliant in that they didn't ever push. They didn't, but they never discouraged. And my dad, bless him, who when I was leaving, I wanted to go to drama school, and my mum wanted me to go to university, and I didn't mind the idea of going to university. But so the agreement was, that's why I applied to study English and drama at Bristol University, which is where I went, and then I wanted to go to drama school afterwards because I felt it would be useful to learn to fall on my arse, not just read books about how you fall on your arse. And my dad, bless him, because there were people saying, "Oh, it's very precarious," and you could get a nice job in a bank or something. And my dad said, "Don't get to be my age and think, if only, go and give it a go." He was, but I think it wouldn't have mattered what it was. If I wanted to be it would. If I wanted to be a Tory MP, he'd have shot me. But anything else would have been all right, So they were very encouraging of you doing things, but they didn't really mind really what that was. Although my mum would have liked it better if it was something she could have told the vicar about. But she was happy when once I was on the telly, that was a lot better. Yeah. Only just because I think, as much as anything, she was a child of the Depression. I mean, she was wanting me to be safe and secure. And, I had the opportunity to go. I went to a nice university and could have got a proper job in the civil service with a pension.
Once you're on the telly, that's financial security, isn't it? People go, "Oh, he must be doing okay."
Oh, yeah, I am millions now. I'm millions.
Yeah.
No, it's not. But I suppose what it means is that, because in the 1960s, up until the 1960s, there was rep theatres in most towns. And people went to the theatre, and actors could make a living, jobbing, as an actor, going around from theatre to theatre. If you were half decent, and you could get, and if you were lucky, things could spiral, but you could make a living as a jobbing actor. That's really tough, and it was quite tough when I left drama school, and it's even tougher now. Kids leaving drama school now are having to do, if they want to get people interested in seeing their work, they're working for nothing. They're working their day arse off during the day. They're doing shows above pubs at night, because there isn't the way where you can go and cut your teeth, play loads of different characters, learn your craft, work with older actors that that you see working, and you get stuff from, you learn stuff from, because that's again, if young people say, "Well, we'll do a play at the Old Red Lion or in a pub somewhere," they're likely to be working with other young people, and while that's brilliant, it means they're not going to get to nick that stuff and see that experience and learn those things from other people. It's like those terrible pubs where everybody's under 25 or everybody's over 50. You don't want, that's a shit pub. You want a pub where there's a load of young people, a load of middle-aged people, and there's older people, and that's what pubs and community are all about. So where I go with that, but I suppose, so what I'm saying is it was difficult to know what making a living would be. I worked for a long time at Harrogate Theatre, and I wrote plays for Harrogate Theatre and directed, and I learned loads from Andrew Manley there. It was brilliant. But my mum and dad were aware that when that wasn't on, what were you going to do? Well, run your dad's market stall was the answer. Thankfully, he had a heart attack and he needed someone to do it. So that fills in those gaps.
Oh, okay.
I think you should be doing a bit less, Dad, and I think you should let me do the run to the wholesalers on Sunday. But then when they see you on telly, I suppose because you're sort of by association with successful people. Do you know what I mean? Even if you're not, you're just playing the man that says, "Excuse me, my lord, there's a man at the door." But you are next to people who are more successful, and of course, other people see it, and you go into people's homes in a way that you don't with theatre. You just get to see other theatre goers, and it's harder and harder to make a living from theatre, I think.
It's something that Graham Cole was saying that to us at the weekend. He was saying about when he was starting in the industry, because of course the BBC were producing so many things, ITV were doing so many things, and he said it was quite easy then to just get into a show and stand back and observe, and you might not have much to do, but just to learn on the job. And he said he fears for young actors now as to where they're going to go and how they're going to get that training. Like you were saying, it's a real shame.
Because you can't earn, they struggle to earn a crust while learning. They leave drama school, and there's, like we say, they're working as a waiter every hour God sends, because rent in London is ridiculous. And if they do get to work, it's very often with other young people, which of course are brilliant talents. I'm not critic, but I learned watching people who could relax better than I could. I was very keen to perform and very, making it, and just sit back, whoa, let it easy, and watching people who just had that sort of confidence and that sort of ease with creating a character and doing less, not doing more, and you don't get that if you're just going to be with a load of other people who are as experienced as you are,
Well, here we are, a second location and a second set of numbers with our guest president this week, Vincent Franklin. And our second numbers are
0, 6, 0.
060. And that means the subject is general organization and museology. So we're off to the museum.
Oh, wow, yeah. No, that's space. Museum. Who doesn't like a museum?
Oh, I love a museum. I absolutely love a museum. Are you
Shit ones. I really love shit museums.
what's your shittest one so far?
Oh, well, to be honest, when I was a kid, I used to go to Cartwright Hall in Manningham Park, right, which is now a really brilliant art gallery, but it was a museum at the time. And the best thing in it, I remember as a kid, was just brilliant. In one room, there was what looked like a sideways-on cupboard, and if you opened it, there was a live beehive in. The bees could go in and out, and you could open it and see the glass and see the bees come in. You could look out the window and see them going in and out a little chute. That was brilliant. What I love here's a piece of flint. There was an arrowhead found in the, and they've got cases and cases, and they're the same in every town. Wherever you go in Britain, there will be bits of broken pottery, bits of flint, and bits of a sandal. And I think there's a shot. I think somewhere they just make them and distribute them, like the furniture you see in National Trust properties. That's not real furniture. That's just stuff they just make and send out to big posh houses to go, yeah, put that mock rococo thing, because they're all the same. So yeah, there's somebody somewhere making flint arrowheads.
Or with National Trust properties, it's black lacquer Japanese stuff as well.
Absolutely, a lot of black lacquer Japanese stuff. And you'd think you wouldn't want to put that in because we've stolen it. Every National Trust property you go to now, it's like, this is what we stole from India. Yeah. The person who owned this stole most of his wealth from sub-Saharan Africa.
There's a brilliant National Trust place, I don't know if you've been, called Irvig.
No, it sounds like a children's 5-minute comedy series from the 1970s. Irvig's coming into town.
Yeah, one of Ivor the Ensign's mates. Yeah, but it was big old stately home that was owned by a Victorian nutter who nowadays you'd call him a hoarder, but in his day he was a collector, and he collected so much of everything that he had to move out of his house and ended his life living in his own shed. But it's got all kinds of gubbins in it, clock parts and weird Victorian taxidermy. You know the way they used to give kids taxidermy sets where you'd have all the characters from The Wind in the Willows made from real dead toads and things?
No, you say that like everybody knows that. I had no idea they did that.
Do you not? There's just stuff.
I got a
The real-
spirograph for Christmas. This was so much better.
It was cool. Yeah. Yeah, they used to, like Beatrix Potter, you'd get a rabbit and stuff him and put him in Peter Rabbit's little blue jacket and give him to a child, which is why the Victorians were all weird as shit, I imagine. But what made me think of it was that it's also the home of the largest collection of samurai armor in Europe. So when you were saying he was, that's what he was doing as well. He was looting the Asian continent for bits and pieces and then just shoving it all in his house in Yorkshire, Derbyshire.
Well, I'm going to have to look this one up. I'm going to have to go and find. I've actually just rejoined the National Trust. We had membership given to us when we got married, and then we let it lapse because where we are now there was nothing. And then we went on holiday this year to Cornwall, and it just rained, and we realised there were loads of National Trust places, and so we went again. They are brilliant, but you do walk around going, oh yeah. This isn't really ours, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the one that's really sort of got to me was the first time I went to Fountains Abbey. Oh, that was absolutely spectacular because, of course, at night they light it beautifully and you get the singing of Gregorian plain chant coming out of the tower. And that was, it moved a cynical little 14-year-old as I was. I mean, I really found that quite captivating, really. I think we are looking, I mean, at least with those ones we can say that we didn't steal the monasteries. They were stolen, admittedly, but at least we can say, well, they were ours to begin with, sort of, I suppose.
Well, you can sort of, although the reason he got away with dissolution of the monasteries, wasn't it, was because the monasteries were very, very wealthy and taking a lot of money, and they owned most of you. I've been to Fountains; it's really brilliant. I did a lot of my courting with my wife there, and Brimham Rocks. If you're there again, go to Brimham Rocks as well. Amazing, they're natural phenomenon. But the abbeys were quite wealthy, weren't they? And you could pay the wealthy then paid them loads of money to pray, so that they didn't have to do too much of the praying themselves. Yeah, it was, at least but you're quite right. We hadn't stolen anything.
No, that's true. It does remind me, though, that there was a system under which you could call somebody round to your house and he would bless your chicken and declare it was a fish for a certain amount of money, so you could eat it on a day when you shouldn't have. I know that was a trade that went on.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And because it was on Fridays, you could only eat fish or duck because it lives, on or near water, so it counts as a yeah. There's loads of things, isn't there, that Henry VIII got. There's kind of books, aren't there, of how they managed to persuade themselves spiritually that this was really a fish they were having.
Exactly.
Barnacle geese.
Barnacle geese.
Barnacle geese.
Yeah.
It was believed that they hatched from barnacles and were therefore a fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very loose, isn't it? But okay, fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, isn't it? It's all workarounds and loopholes and
If you want pork, you just get a pig and drown it, and in the process of drowning it, you go, okay, well, now it's a water mammal, so surely that's okay.
That's a fish.
Oh, we've a lovely little museum in the village here, haven't we, though? I love small museums, and there's a great one in Avebury, which is built within a Neolithic circle, and it's got, I think, the barber surgeon, they call him, and it's just some poor bloke's skeleton. And when they were uprighting one of the stones that had fallen over, they discovered that God knows how long ago it had just fallen on this man and crushed him whilst they were manoeuvring it. So, but now he's preserved, and you can have a good stare at this crushed remains of the barber surgeon.
How do they know his occupation?
Well, I don't think they do. I imagine that they were sort of like guessing and looking for a name, but he is the barber surgeon.
He threw the comb in his back pocket. Would it be?
Right, he was busy shaving as the thing fell and crushed him. Yeah, that's why surgeons in this country are called Mister and not Doctor.
Is it?
Yeah, because historically, 17th, 18th century, when we're getting medicine organised as a proper science instead of just people gassing, surgeons didn't have medical degrees. It was just anybody with a steady hand and a sharp blade would be called in to assist. So you have people like butchers amputating legs with saws, and a barber, because a barber had very sharp blades and very steady hands, as well as doing shaving, they would do tooth extractions and removal of warts and that sort of thing.
Which is in the Sweeney Todd story, isn't it? That's what the
Exactly
conclusion he has, is that he can shave somebody and then he extracts a tooth is the next sort of challenge.
That's absolutely right, which is in the musical as well, isn't it? Sacha Baron Cohen does it in the film version with Johnny Depp. But yeah, it's one of the things you'd think would be a hole in the Sweeney Todd story would be, well, why is this barbershop covered in blood? And the answer is because he does surgery on the side.
Ah, I had no idea of any of that. That's lovely to know.
So that's, yeah, historically, surgeons weren't doctors, so they're not called doctor in this case.
So that's why and so even now, isn't it? If you become a doctor, you go to med school and you become a doctor. But if you go into surgery and you become a consultant, you're called Mister again.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's why there's some confusion over dentists as to whether they're Mister or Doctor or whatever. They tend to just choose their own appellative.
And I heard, I could be wrong here, but I heard a while ago that when the Queen Mum, i.e. no longer, the Queen's mum, our King's mother's mother, had to have
Queen Grandma.
Indeed, had to have orthopedic surgery. She had a specialist, obviously, do it in Harley Street, I imagine, or whatever, who was a surgeon, and it was a female surgeon because obviously that's more appropriate and all of that. But actually, it was somebody who was transgender, who had, because you need for that sort of surgery massive upper body strength. So there's more men than women doing it. So this woman, who was a very experienced and obviously brilliant surgeon, but had previously, or when they were younger, not identified as a woman. That came later in their life, but made them presumably a very appropriate surgeon, not just for the Queen Mum, but for lots of people who would find it easier to go and speak to a woman than a man. I don't know. I just heard that it was a tremendous, rather modern and brilliant thing that the woman had her surgery done by somebody who was transgender. I hope it's true. If it's not true, it is now because we've said it.
Why not?
No, that's true. No, Trump, he's the president, and if he says it, it's true. So presumably, if I say things, it can be true as well. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, because you're the guest president. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, yeah, unless a lot of orthopedic surgeons, you look at them, they're built like rugby players because orthopedic surgery is just carpentry inside you. They literally use Black and Decker.
So they don't say that. They don't say I can do this. Basically, carpentry.
Carpentry. Well, that's not fair. Maybe it's basically joinery.
It's scaffolding, but on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, we touched on Trump, so I'm going to take the opportunity there to ask about the thick of it, because we've talked to a few people before about the whole process of how that show was made, and it doesn't seem to have been made like any other show when it comes to the scripting, the fact that it was part scripted, part improvised, and then sort of mashed together. I mean, can talk us through what it was like to take that job on, because it must have been a tremendous thing to do.
It was one of the most joyous things to be part of. Mando is a really brilliant nurturer of people, and the comedy's full of people who are sort of scary and or horrible or both. However funny they are, they're quite intimidating. Whereas Mando is really very warm and welcoming, and you don't feel you're going to be hung up to dry. Do you mean, or that it's all kind of a competition? The audition for it was an improvisation. I had to persuade a Tory minister to put a wind farm on his land. But once you get in, the scripts are great, and you don't want to be like Joey and Friends, who goes about, we just make up most of the script really, and so they send it down the shaft. The scripts were always brilliant, but they were always too long, so we would read them and then be sent home while they shortened them. And then when they came back, they hadn't really got much shorter because they'd taken some stuff out, but they put some other stuff in. And then among these brilliant thing of if there was like a scene in the car and then a scene in my office, so they're on the way to me and then there's going to be a scene in my office, we would read that through just once and then we would rehearse. And we did have rehearsals because we shot pages and pages a day, much more than any other drama. So that earned us some rehearsal, if you see what I mean, at the beginning to get ready to do, not to block things, but to play with these characters. So he would say, right, okay, you've come out of the car, let's do the scene in the corridor, improvise the scene in the corridor. So it's them talking after they've got out of the car on the way to my office. And then he'd say to me, go and meet them halfway. And the writers would be in and you'd make this stuff and they'd scribble stuff down and then they would put this stuff together and come up with a better script. And then when we were filming, you would very rarely do more than a couple of takes, always with a couple of cameras, no continuity. There's no kind of, last time you picked the phone up with your left hand and now you've used, no one cared if you were a different place in the room. Amanda would always say, when new people came, you'd see him say the same to them, just listen and respond. Don't worry, just listen and join in. So you do a couple of runs of the script not worrying too much to say about continuity. And then he'd say, right now, let's just dump the script and do another, and do one without it. And I remember one of my first days, it was just me on the phone. So it's just you in your office. And I had the line was like, don't let him talk to the press. He's about as funny as a child's funeral. And somebody said, that's not a great line. Is there something else? We got another line Stewart could say instead of child's funeral. No, have we got, because there's books of things Stewart, and there were, I don't think we have. Oh, never mind, Vince, just say something else. Okay, turn over. And it's like, and that's great because then but you're never going to be hung out to dry. We've got the other one. Think of something else. If you don't, it'll be fine. We'll go with child's funeral. But yeah, that's how it worked. And I think I said about as funny as George Formby, and I think we covered that in the end because I can't, and Stewart couldn't stand George Formby. But that was that's how it worked, and and the nicest bunch of people to be about, and because everyone loved doing everyone I involved it really loved the show and cared about the show, and you were asked to engage completely. Do you know what I mean? There was no sense of, look, just learn the lines and turn up and please don't get in the way. If you had a thought or something, you could throw it in, but you were surrounded by people who have gone on since to write their Emmy-winning TV series of their own, who were one of the team of writers. You had the joy of reading out their stuff.
Mm. And you also had the joy, of course, of being one of the few people who wasn't able to be intimidated by Peter Capaldi. So that must have just been lovely, having the opportunity to butt heads with him.
There was one of my favourite episodes is there's a Radio 5 Live episode where and the reason I particularly like it is that the thick of it has many brilliant qualities, but a sort of perfect comedic structure is not usually one of them because it just wasn't what it was about. But that one for me does have that brilliant, it's almost like an episode of something like Frasier or something in terms of its structuring, in that you've got these people arriving at Radio 5 separately from the opposing camps. Then they've each got a member of their team missing because they're having dinner together because there's a thing going on, and then they each phone to get support from the people above, and so Capaldi arrives, and everything is sort of beautifully engineered to be, and then we both realise that neither of us give a shit about the people who are in this room. It does Chernobyl FM, I think, is what but we go for each other in the lobby to begin with, and you think, oh god, here it is, and then both of them going, why are we doing this? These are nobodies. This is yeah. I know you paid someone to shit on your chest.
Oh, is it true that Peter Capaldi couldn't eat with the other actors because it made it too difficult to be horrible to them?
I don't know. That sounds to me like bullshit, but I don't know. He was he's a very nice man. I remember we used to nearly all of the thick of it that I'd worked on was shot out near Watford, and there was a kind of old not stately, it had been a sort of, I think it might have been an old people's home at one point, and then it had been the headquarters of an industry or something. It was one of those kind of strange Victorian tumbly things with the new bits had added. Consequently, it had a bit that looked like Number 10 and the kind of those kind of going up and down corridors and up and down the staircases at Number 10. But it also had a modern wing, which was where all of Stewart's stuff was. We could do nearly everything that wasn't location specific in this one place. And I was going there we went there to rehearse on a Sunday because there was no crew, it's just us rehearsing. And you'd have a lot of times, so we'd stop and buy the papers. And as I was stopping, a car pulled in behind me and had been following me, and it was Peter. He said, I wanted to say hi, and to say, because my daughter was going to come in today and be in the green room because we're going up to Scotland, and I wanted to check with you that was okay. And I said, well, it's just our green room. We said, no, but it's our green room. I didn't want to just, impose somebody else on the green room without you saying that was okay. You couldn't find a less Malcolm Tucker-esque person, really. But I don't really know, because we were very rarely met. We're not allowed, it was like you weren't allowed to put the Minto into the Coke. So that we met a couple of times only, really, apart from that episode. So I bumped into him. I don't think I ever ate with him, but I don't remember it being a thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, here we are, our third location and our third and final set of numbers with our guest president, Vincent Franklin, and our third and final numbers are
7, 7, 7.
777, which means, again, not assigned or no longer used. So we go back to 770, and the subject is photography and photographs. Photography and photographs. So, Vincent, are you a keen photographer? I'm going to guess no.
Well, you're absolutely wrong. I have a City and Guilds in photography that I took a few years ago. So yeah, because I liked photography when I was a kid. I had an old Zenit E, which I bought secondhand. The Zenit E was a Eastern European camera behind the Iron Curtain. They weighed about as much as a Buick, and they were so heavy, so solid, and really cheap. And okay, and then I didn't have one for a while, and I wanted to buy myself a proper SLR camera again, probably a digital one, because they're quite expensive. And in my terrible Northern Presbyterian way, I thought I can only do this if I go and do a sort of course on how to sort of properly use one of these. And there was a night school. I wanted to do welding, but it wasn't available. But there was a night school that was doing that. So I went and did a little course that just showed you really how to set it and use it and kind of, blah, blah, blah. And the tutor said to a couple of us, you should stay on and do your City and Guilds. So I did. So I have a City and Guilds, a distinction in my City and Guilds. I did portfolios. One was supposed to be at a brief, and one of them was for a children's baking party company. So I used lots of sort of shapes of cutters and stuff. And the other was the cover for 3 books of poetry from 3 different periods. So I did details of architectural buildings to reflect the kind of rules of very rigorous, kind of the sort of very rigorous rules of 18th century poetry, that kind of classical kind of rule of 18th century poetry. I did Victorian poetry. I used lots of stuff as some Pancras and kind of that arching empirical kind of stuff and celebrating steam and industry. And then I did one that was poetry of the medieval poetry. And I went to St Albans and did lots of details of the abbey. It was now the Cathedral Abbey at St Albans. So yeah, boo sucks. Actually, I'm interested in photography.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay. Didn't know that at all. That's fantastic. That's amazing. Was that something that you had ever thought that you would actually end up doing, a City and Guilds, or was that just...
No, that was just because this bloke did it. It was partly also because at the time I was starting to direct a few corporate videos, sort of comedy corporates. And you get a good cameraman who would say to you, who's clearly, knows a damn sight more than you, and he'd say, I thought I'd put this on the sticks and shoot it on a 75, and you'd go, yeah, like, it sounds great. In the same way that I go to the garage and he says, yeah, you've got a problem, your big end's gone, it's cracked, we need to put, and you go, yeah, I go, yeah, but I do it very northern at the garage. My kids laugh like, oh god, yeah, no, yeah, it was making a bit of a noise. I thought it might be a problem. You got trying, I don't convinces nobody. But I did, so I thought it'd be much better to have a conversation where I would know what they were talking about. And I thought therefore learning to use a camera, the basic rules are the same of what a 75mm or 100mm or a 30mm lens does to the image. And actually it was really brilliant because I worked not long after on a job I was directing with this really lovely director of photography, little cameraman, who said I could put it here on a 70. And I said, well, what if we were to pull it back a bit and do it on 100? And he went, oh, I tell you what we could do. So it wasn't that I had a better idea than him. All I did was be interested enough for him to go, oh, rather than just doing what I've always done, maybe somebody's interested in what I'm doing. And he shot some really brilliant stuff for us. But I like being able to have the conversation about it. I am one of those people who can't resist having a look at stuff. I'm a bit of a Mr. Toad, really. I want to go, oh, what's under that stone? Oh, that's interesting. I'd like to know a bit more about that. Let's stick with it a bit more than Mr. Toad. But yeah, I am, I've done a bit of glass blowing and I've done a bit of ceramics and I do lino cutting and all sorts of stupid stuff. Because you think, yeah, we'll go at that. That looks fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it strikes me that you're a really quite a collaborative person as an artist. Would that be right? That you like that sort of, that sharing of information and creativity?
Yeah, I like being in a team. I'm a team player. All my sports were team, rugby and stuff was all, yeah, I'm not really, I don't get the idea of tennis. How was that? It's on your own. No. But also I find even when I'm working on other things, like if I'm writing something, it would be much better for me to explain what the story is to my wife or to people I'm with and sort of say, look, it's going to be like this, it's about this woman or this man who, and as I'm doing it, And they're saying, what about that other? It builds and builds. Whereas if I just sat down and tried to write it, it would be intimidating to write. So I find that the telling of a story is also the writing of a story. Does that make sense? That the two things being very much together. And I love being in a room with other people. I love rehearsing plays. I get bored performing plays after a while. I did a play at Stratford last year, which I really loved, called Kyoto, about the Kyoto Agreement. You know, that whole extraordinary meeting, beginning of the movement to change how we burn fossil fuels, and it went into the West End, and they said, we're going to go into West End, come do it, and I realised I couldn't do the same play for 5 months, and it's terrible. I'd really loved doing it stuff, and I loved rehearsals, and I loved doing it for a few weeks out there, but I didn't want to do it for 5 months. I wanted to do something else, glass blowing, or some ceramics, or maybe I'll learn to weld at last.
Oh, we were talking a few weeks ago to Michael Fenton Stevens, who had a part in, was it Wicked, I think? And he was saying apparently those big Hollywood-style musicals are torturous because you have to do everything exactly the same every night. If you're walking off stage and the actor who played it last stopped and turned and raised a hand, you've got to stop, turn and raise the same hand and then walk off again. It's got to be identical every time.
Yeah, and full respect to them, because I've seen loads of those shows, but I've seen a few of those big shows, and they are amazing, those performers. You think, God, you're the 20th person to do this, and yet there is no cynicism. There is no, their performances are extraordinary. When I say I didn't want to do it, it's not because I don't think it's not beneath me or anything. It's just I wanted to do something else, something, because also, as we said at the beginning, it's difficult making a living as an actor. I'm not complaining. I have a very lovely time at it. But theatre is a privilege to do as an actor, because if like me, you've got family, because you're not going to be there in the evening to help out and do anything practical. And it's not going to pay a huge amount of money unless you're a big star doing something, perhaps doing something. So it's a real privilege to go and do a play. So to do a play up in Stratford and then 6 months later to do the same play again you're using all your good tokens at home. Do you know what I mean? You're using all your brownie points on the same play. You want to go, no, I'm going to wait until there's something else where I can go, look, I'd really like to do this. But those people that do those big shows they are extraordinary. Although when I go and see them, I'm sometimes go, oh, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. And then the reality of, as you say, of, I'm not good enough singer either. There's lots of reasons why nobody's asked me. Nobody's going, please come and do, Les Miserables. No one's, But when I see them, I do think those people in it are absolutely amazing, and that they do it 8 times a week for 50 weeks a year is extraordinary.
It is. Yeah. What about rehearsal then? Because I presume that's something that you really value, that whole thing of rehearsal and playing. Really. Yeah. So how important is that to you? I mean, compared almost to performance, obviously they're two different things, but does performance sometimes feel like, well, that's the payoff I've got to do in exchange for this lovely creative period? Yeah,
so sometimes a bit. I think Rudy Shelley was a legend at Bristol Old Vic. He was an amazing old teacher, and he used to constantly say, "Oh, darling, it is a play, so play." And it was which was really, and I do love that. I love being, I've directed quite a bit of theatre, and I love being in a room with actors and watching their invention and watching. Again, when I said I don't play tennis, there is that in the sense that if somebody changes what they're doing, somebody else finds a new thing that they throw, means that they throw the ball over the net differently, then that other person responds differently, and so everything starts to build and change. And rehearsals are very exciting, and you find new ideas. Somebody comes in with a bit of research or something about a character that changes, and it's all the plates spin differently. Performance is different, but in theatre, if it's the sort of plays I love, there is another element, which is that audience, and audiences will be different. For Christmas Carol, it's very specific, and because it's just you and an audience, depending on how they're responding, you are telling them the story. And we're very clear in our version. We don't take you back to 1857. We are in this theatre today, tonight, and we're going to tell this story with these few things. And it's a bit like doing stand-up in that you are, you're properly talking to people and that. But even in a bigger play where you're pretending there's no one there, it just takes one actor to enter more quickly or enter more slowly or not come on different. And actually, if you listen to Armando and listen and respond, it will slightly change what you do, and everything will shift in an interesting way. I'm not throwing babies out with bathwater. Of course, there's principles you're always going to stick to, but I think the secret is to always be rehearsing, really, and not looking for that the same response we did last night, but to reinvent the play again tonight. They always say if you're playing Hamlet, don't come on at the beginning knowing you're going to die in Act 5. And also, if you come on at the beginning of the play, don't go, oh, there's a really big laugh on two. And I'm just thinking about that laugh. Alan Bennett said a really brilliant thing in his book, Writing Home, his collection of his writings. He wrote a comedy called Habeas Corpus, went out on tour. He'd not seen it for a few weeks, and he went to see it, I think, and he said something like, went to see the play in Richmond. Actors are doing what actors will do, leaping from joke to joke like frogs across lily pads with scant regard for what lies between. And you think, it's a really great line, because the secret is to always have regard for what lies between, not just go, oh yeah, I know, we move on to that bit and that's the big laugh. And that also keeps it alive, is having more than a scant regard for what lies between. Yeah.
Well, here we are back in the shed. Our rambles once again, and for now, are at an end. And Vincent Franklin, thank you so much. I mean, to talk to anybody who was involved in the thick of it, which is just such a wonderful series, is always a joy. But it's been just genuinely fascinating as well, talking about acting. It's clearly, you love art. You love your art, don't you?
I do. I'm very nervous about the word art, except verb. I get the idea that's what Grayson Perry says, isn't it? Art's a verb, not a noun. Like that. But I think maybe it's just because I'm prejudiced and that sounds terrible, but I'm kind of, northern lad going, what are you fucking talking about? It's difficult. I really think stories are brilliant, and I think they are what defines who we are, both individually and collectively. What we are is the stories that we tell about ourselves, and acting is a really exciting way of telling stories, so I like it for that.
Oh, well, wonderful. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you, of course, to everyone at home for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed this week's meeting of the Rambling Club.
The club meets every Friday, but if you'd like to get in touch in the meantime, here's how you can find your fellow members.
The show's official website is at www.tonyslattery.com, and you can get in touch with us on the contact form on the website.
We're also on Twitter at Slattery Live. Please feel free to use the hashtag TSRC to discuss any of this week's topics.
And I'm on Twitter at the moment too, at Paul Carmichael V, but you can find me on Blue Sky, where I'm Paul Carmichael UK, and you can find Rambling Club on Blue Sky as well.
And Tony also has a good old-fashioned Facebook group at www.facebook.com/group/TheTonySlattery.
And he's on Instagram at Tony_Slattery_official.
And if people want to join this week's guest president, Vincent Franklin, on his social media, how would they do that, Vincent?
Well, you can find me on X. I'm Vincent Franklin on X. I'm also on Blue Sky, which is like X, but with hippies on it and fewer people. And I've also got an Instagram account. If you look up Vincent Franklin, you will find it, because it's a pretty rare name. And it would be lovely to connect with people, especially people who've enjoyed this kind of nonsense podcast, which we all love.
Absolutely. And if people want to join the Rambling Club for themselves, Paul, how do they do that?
Well, Al, the club is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can head over to www.patreon.com/Slattery Live, where we would be delighted to welcome you. There's all sorts of perks for members there. You can find episodes in advance, and you can also find a podcast that goes out twice a month, which is myself and Alan and Mark Hutchinson, who was our lovely Tony's partner, and all sorts of other bits and pieces. So head over to www.patreon.com/Slattery Live.
And if you've enjoyed us talking to guest president Vincent Franklin about photos and photography, why not go over to wherever you get your podcasts and leave us 5 stars? You can do it in a flash, or leave a lovely little review and say that you like the Rambling Club and you'd hate to see it shuttered.
Very good. And please do get in touch with us by any of those methods. We would be delighted to hear from you. And we will be back for another ramble next Friday at 5 to 5. But in the meantime, it's a goodbye from myself, Paul Carmichael. It's a goodbye from a colleague, Mr. Alan Lear.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from our guest president this week. Thank you so much, Vincent Franklin.
What a joy. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
You have been listening to Tony Slattery's Rambling Club with our special guest president, Vincent Franklin. He was accompanied by Stephen Fry as the voice of the bingo machine. Acting President Franklin was assisted by Paul Carmichael and Alan Lear. The music was composed and performed by Michael Livesley and Andy Frizzle. Silly Voices are by Michael Livesley and the show's concept is by Paul Carmichael. Our producers are Stuart Morris and Alan Dybing and the show's researcher is Sola Carmichael. The show's producers are Erica Leader and Mark Hutchinson and the series executive producer is Mark Strickson. Tony Slattery's Rambling Club is a Fanfinidal production.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.